Well, hi everybody. Welcome to the Stratosphere Lounge, episode 22, on a rather dark day for America, or a day after a dark day for America, I guess. This is going to be exclusively about Hillary Clinton and the FBI ruling. I've got a lot of thoughts that I'm going to be sharing with you tonight that I'm going to turn into Firewall tomorrow, I imagine. Seems like my volume's a little low. I can't really tell, so I'm just going to boost it a little bit. And if it turns out you guys can't hear me, I'll certainly hear back about it. Yeah, it's a shocking day, and there's no way to gild it. I'm going to be talking quite a bit about the Comey thing. That's what the afterburner. I'm sorry, that's what the firewall is going to be about tomorrow. Is specifically what was he saying? Because I think that's really the issue. Also, I have so much production work to do that I'm going to have to try and keep this one to an hour or so. I know I always say that, but I think the 3-hour episodes are kind of fun if you're, in a medically induced coma or something. But otherwise, these move along a little bit faster. So I've got a bunch of questions, and I'm going to pretty much jump right into them. I don't have much else to add about, any happy news that came in front of me. As a matter of fact, turns out I was not able to go up to Idaho for the 4th of July. I just couldn't get through the work. We're putting out a show a day now, at least a show a day. And I just couldn't. I was going to go Saturday, and by Saturday I was working on it. I said, okay, I'll push it to Sunday. And by the time I got out here on Sunday, it was 1 or 2 in the morning. By the time I got home to sleep, it was 3. I wanted to be in the air by 7, 8 at the latest. I'm not going to fly with 4 hours sleep, so I just wasn't able to go. I'm going to try and go in a couple of weeks and make the trip up there. I'm going to leave the airplane up there for the canopy work, which is going to drive Bert crazy because Bert actually designed that airplane pretty much perfectly, and virtually every change that gets made to it makes it worse. But as I said before, I'm not in this for performance. I just want to change the looks of it. And I could go into that, but I'm just not going to on account of the fact that we've got so much to cover today. Let me just get this camera a little bit more positioned. We'll get rolling here. Okay, so it's a dark day. I want to thank everybody who's a member here. As always, I usually end the show that way. I want to start this one by that. And we made an appeal on the Facebook Live show yesterday, and also through our newsletter. And so far, it's been a pretty good response. We got about 15% of the total that we need to raise to move to the next step in one day. So that's not bad at all. I'm pretty happy about that. So we'll maybe close with that. But right now, let's just kind of get into things. I've got a theory here about this whole thing. And so I'm going to lay out the theory, and I'm going to end up probably stepping on the toes of some of these questions. So I'll get the questions afterwards, and I may have already covered it in the sort of the peroration. There's one thing I just do need to say here. Yeah. The second question is from Nicholas. You know what? I'm going to just go through them in order because I put them in order. They're actually pretty good order. So let's just start with this one. Kevin Kilcoyne says, why the red herring about whether emails were classified or not? Simply moving them off the official system is enough, and setting up their own servers is prima facie evidence of their intent. Couldn't have put it better myself. In the Facebook Live thing yesterday, I said it doesn't matter if they're classified, and it doesn't matter how many of them there are. If she took records out and did not return them at the end of her term, that's a felony. And if it can be shown that she tried to obfuscate or erase, damage, hide those records, that's a separate felony. And that second felony comes with the express proviso that you no longer can hold any office in the United States government. That means park ranger. There's no question at all, none, that she broke those two laws. But everybody's concentrating on, well, was it a national security leak? Did she handle the information recklessly? It doesn't matter. Now, you may say, well, those are little laws, but that's really the problem, right? I mean, that's really the problem. The problem is that people will say, well, okay, so she didn't return a couple of emails. It's not like she put them on the front page of the New York Times. Well, number one, maybe she might as well have. But more important than that is really the whole idea of the rule of law. That's what's at stake here. That's why this is so catastrophic. It's not a political loss for us. If Hillary Clinton is elected president after this, it's not just a political loss for us. I would take 5 terms of Hillary Clinton if the rule of law was intact, and I would take none of them. I'd take no terms of Ronald Reagan if Ronald Reagan could just dictate law, but we know Ronald Reagan had no desire to dictate law, so that's kind of a non sequitur. This is it. I mean, this is the Rubicon. For those of you that are not familiar, maybe heard the term before, I came to the understanding of the term pretty late, but you hear the expression, somebody's crossed the Rubicon. It's become a milestone that is not only significant, but it's almost irreversible. You've done something, now you're committed, you're pot committed, you're in. In the days of when Rome was a republic, before it became an empire, there were very strict rules about keeping an army inside of Roman territory. Those armies were supposed to be kept on the frontiers, pushing away Rome's enemies, and they were very strict and very careful, and it's actually very smart too, that if you brought an army into Rome, you were making a power play. And the boundary of Rome was called the Rubicon River, and when Caesar decided to make a power play and become emperor, he took his army and they crossed the Rubicon and came into Rome, and that was the sign that, okay, now it's on. So they certainly crossed the Rubicon with this one, I think. I think this is it. This is, people have always asked, well, what's the signal? What's the, when are you going to know? Is it going to be a national gun confiscation thing? I think this is it. For reasons that I'm going to elucidate, it's not the end of the country, but it is the end of half of the country's respect for the rule of law. I mean, if it turns out, well, we don't have to say if it turns out anymore. We know how it turns out. There are laws for American citizens, and then there are laws for elected Democrats. And I mean elected Democrats because Republicans don't get to skate above the law the way that the Democrats do. I've said this 100 times. I'll say it again. I don't want a press that protects Republicans and conservatives and leaves and goes after liberals. I want a press that attacks everybody. That's what their job is. But we don't have a press. This whole thing can be laid at the feet of the press. All of it. Obama, Clinton, the email scandal, Benghazi, all of it. It's all the fault of the press. All of it. And if we had a press, we wouldn't have had this president. We wouldn't have had this Secretary of State. We wouldn't have had the email scandal. We wouldn't have had any of it. It would have been dealt with early in the way that Richard Nixon's corruption was dealt with, which is you put enough pressure on him until he walks away. He realizes that the cat is out of the bag. It's not going back in the bag. So before we talk about my theory, let's just talk about the I don't want to say the magnitude of the crime, just the audacity that's the word I'm looking for, the audacity. Okay, so, I mean, what's not there? I mean, what is missing from what David Horowitz called the biggest fix in history, and I think that's pretty much it. What didn't you have? When you have the Attorney General who's who while an active prosecution is going on, meeting with the husband of the suspect and in an airplane on a tarmac, and to have the audacity, number one, to say that, no, it was just a random meeting. Please. We just talked about golfing and grandchildren. We never, ever discussed the case at all. Who do you think you are? You know what it's like? It's like Michael Jackson. It's like Michael Jackson sitting there in his last years emphatically telling you to your face that he's never had any plastic surgery of any kind. He might have had one small little plastic surgery on his nose that was internal to help his breathing or something. He never had any plastic surgery, never had anything done. And that those 2 blonde, blue-eyed kids are his as well. There's a comic named Cat Williams. He's not for everybody. He is very, very, very rough around the edges. But he was talking about that back when Michael Jackson was alive. He said, I'm a grown man. I'm a grown man. Don't tell me that these blonde kids are your children, Michael. Don't tell me that you never had any plastic surgery. But we believe it. We just go along with it because it's what we do. It's the go along with it. One of the lines I'm going to use in this firewall, I think, is absolutely it. It's not like they are insulting our intelligence. They know that we know. They're insulting our willpower. They know that we know, and they also know that we're not going to do anything about it. That's their calculation. And they have every reason to believe that calculation. And it's not going to be up to the Justice Department, the FBI. It's not going to be up to the Republicans. It's not going to be up to Congress. It's not going to be up to anybody to put an end to this except for us. That's it. And it is gaslighting. Good point, Mr. Melbourne. That's exactly right. It's gaslighting. It's making you think that you're crazy when you're not crazy. The meeting, and then you hear the presumably the next president of the United States saying, Loretta Lynch is doing a great job. I think I'd keep her on in my administration 2 days before the announcement, something like that. And then all of it, it's just so transparently, patently obvious, or patently obvious, whichever it is, that this thing is a setup and it's a scam and it's a deal and it's corruption at the highest level of the most powerful country in the history of the world. This is the most flagrant abuse of actual Republican, democratic republic. I mean, I'm talking about the form of government. It is the most flagrant transgression, in my opinion, of this style of government in the history of the world. So why did they think they could get away with it? Well, they thought they could get away with it because they got away with everything else. They decide to use executive orders on something as enormous as immigration. We don't do anything. They decide they're going to ram this Obamacare thing down our throat without a single Republican vote. And then they're going to continuously, just by whim, just by waving his fingers, he's going to delay the implementation date of the legislation because it suits him. And we did nothing. And when I say we, I don't mean you and I, because you and I sent Republicans to the House in 2010, and then we sent Republicans to take the Senate in 2014. When I say we did nothing, I mean they did nothing. Nothing. Zero. That's a whole nother firewall that's coming up next. What I want to talk about the psychology of the Republicans. I know the psychology of the Democrats is not up for discussion. They're power-mad collectivists, and they have to have power, and they certainly can't gain power on their own merit because they're too lazy and they're too stupid. So they have to get power through coercion and legislation, and they do that by lying to the American people and buying their votes. Pretty simple, really. So the magnitude, the optics, that's the term we use. That's a relatively recent term in politics, the optics. How does it look? How does it look? Does it appear unseemly? Well, these are the worst optics in the history of the Republic. By the way, I was reading, this just reminded me of something. I was reading an essay by Kim and Connie Dutoit turned me on to this guy named named Nock, Albert Nock, I think it was Albert Nock, N-O-C-K. And he wrote an essay I like a lot called Isaiah's Job. But I think he started one of these essays by talking about one of the presidents, would have been the president at the turn of the 1900s, somewhere in there, and I do not remember which one it was. It might have been Warren G. Harding. It was one of those kind of guys. And it turned out that there was something really actually pretty simple and pretty efficient and absolutely blameless. It's simply 100% legal and 100% above board. And the president said, we're not going to do that. And the reason he said he's not going to do it is because he thought it would look unseemly. He thought it was unseemly looking. He didn't have to worry about proving it was nothing criminal, because there was nothing criminal, but he didn't like the way it looked to the American people. So he didn't do it. These people, Hillary and Obama and Loretta Lynch and all the rest of them, show us how much contempt they have for our willpower, for our ability to swallow anything with this one, because it could not be more flagrant. And they know they're not going to pay a price for it. They not only not going to pay a price for it, they're going to get a benefit out of it. Because the press doesn't think it's a story that this woman had 115 classified emails on a server, that she had multiple devices, and that everything she said in her initial press conference about this issue, everything was a lie. Every single point was a lie. So, yes, if she took records home and didn't return them, it's a felony. If she took records home and didn't return them, when I say home, I mean got them out of the government in one way or another. If she tried to erase those documents, destroy those documents, hide the fact that she took them, or tried to destroy them, that's a second felony. Those are two felony counts. The second one prohibits you from holding office in the United States. And I don't want to hear about rulings or any of the rest of that stuff. We've heard this crap before with things like the Commerce Clause. And the Commerce Clause is a very simple English sentence that was written by a man named Gouverneur Morris, whose entire job was to take complex things, or sometimes simple things, and make them into simple, easy to understand sentences. And so he wrote the Commerce Clause. I'm not going to get into that whole thing right now, but it's very clear. And people have said, well, the Supreme Court has ruled this. It's like, well, the Supreme Court's wrong. You're saying you know more about the Constitution than the Supreme Court? I'm saying, well, apparently on the Commerce Clause, I know more about the Constitution than the Supreme Court because I can read and understand an English sentence. And here's what it says. And I know who it references. I know who the government is. I know who the people are. I know who the states are. So, yes, the court's wrong. They're absolutely wrong. They're 100% wrong. And if I'm wrong, then the theory of government you've been selling us is a lie. That's kind of what we're learning from all this. So I don't have to tell you guys about the magnitude of it. I don't have to tell you about the bald-faced arrogance of it, the simple, more than arrogance, the cynicism of it, the cynical, smirking calculation, knowing that they're going to do it and they're going to get away with it, that people are going to do what we've always done during the last 8 years. We're going to do what we've done for the last 8 years. We're going to huff and puff and we're going to threaten to blow the house down, and then we're just going to forget about it and we're going to take it. And then we take the next bigger thing, we're going to take that too. I think those days I think the Rubicon has been crossed here. I think half the country's not just done with Hillary Clinton, not just done with this. They're done with this federal government. This is not the government we were advertised. It's not the government we were raised with. When we were in civics class and talking about things like the social compact and separation of powers and all this other stuff, that's what we grew up with. That's what we believe. That's what we send soldiers to die for. And this isn't it. And it hasn't been for a while. So, why did Comey say what he did? Why didn't he bring the charges? He made this entire case, and then said we're not going to bring the charges. I heard this morning when I woke up, I saw two things. I said, first of all, I saw something that Reason Magazine put together. Hillary makes a statement. Comey makes an initial statement back in 15. I think it was June 15. When the story broke, when Hillary makes her initial statement about the emails, I think Reason Magazine cut it together. Here's Hillary's statement. Here's Comey saying it's an absolute lie. Hillary's statement, absolute lie. Hillary's statement, absolute lie. Hillary's statement, absolute lie. Hillary's statement, absolute lie. Absolute lies. I never had classified material on that server. Comey comes out and says there are 115 classified emails on that server. Hillary Clinton says, I took all the emails home. I turned everything back to the government. She said, no, there's 30,000 emails in there that pertain to us. So it's an absolute lie. So here's where we get to the theory, because people want to know why what happened. So I saw this morning before I got in the shower, and I was thinking, okay, he's just tried the case. He's tried the case. He's made the case. So why didn't they bring charges? And then I saw something else, which just kind of put the thing over the top for me. I saw Giuliani, who I admire enormously. When he was running, he was my first choice. That was 2008, I guess. But Giuliani basically said, look, I'm not speaking now he was on TV. I'm not speaking now as a political commentator. I'm speaking as a person who's a lifelong prosecutor. I do this for a living. It's my job. He said, the statute regarding the security infractions, he said they have to prove extreme criminal negligence, something like that. And Comey comes out and says that she handled this with extreme carelessness. Gross negligence is the term, sorry. So Giuliani says the law references gross negligence, and Comey says there was extreme carelessness. And what Giuliani said are these two sets of words are absolutely correlated. They mean the same thing in the court. They're interchangeable. Extreme negligence and I forget what the original one was. It's not. Anyway, and negligence and carelessness mean the same thing. They're the same thing. What Comey is essentially saying is he's using exact, precise legal terms to say that she broke the law. That's what he did. And he took a long time to do this, and he had to think about this very carefully. So let me just tell you this. When I heard the news, I'm like most of you, I just said, you know what? That's it. There's nobody left in the government who has any spine at all. He's another traitor. He's another person who puts his career or politics above his job. I don't care what they threatened him with. He should have gone and presented the charges and been a man and been a patriot and taken the consequences, because he's the head of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. So knowing what we know in the morning about gross negligence, thanks, knowing what we know about Comey saying that she's guilty, why didn't he say we need to press charges? And then I had an image, and I really think this is it. I don't have it completely fleshed out yet, but I'm really quite convinced this is it. When we had prisoners of war taken by the Vietnamese, there were two examples that I can think of. One of them was they were getting a picture taken, and these guys flashed the Hawaiian good luck sign, which turned out to be the bird, the middle finger. They told the North Vietnamese it was the Hawaiian good luck sign, so the Vietnamese released this propaganda picture, and the flyers are flipping everybody the bird. Ha, that's hilarious. And I quite believe, I remember a story that during an interview with one of our airmen who had basically been broken and came out talking about what a great place Vietnam was and how horrible America was and how horrible the war was. Somebody took a look at him and they realized that his blinking pattern was odd, and this guy apparently was blinking in Morse code. He was blinking in Morse code, and I think the word was torture. So, here's my postulate. Comey goes up there. He says something that is going to brand him a traitor by everybody in the country, in the same way that you would look at somebody collaborating with the North Vietnamese as a traitor, and he'll endure all the hatred and all that other stuff. But I think Comey was blinking us a signal in Morse code because I think Comey is a prisoner of war. I think Comey was a prisoner of the circumstances that he was dealt, and I'm beginning to think that he did as much damage to Clinton as he possibly could. So stay with me on this. There's no question that there was a case. When he makes the case for 90 minutes, and then he says something that's such a profoundly odd thing to say. He basically said, yes, we have tons of evidence, but no reasonable prosecutor would bring the charges. What is he saying? I think he's saying that anybody would bring the charges except for the person who is going to be bringing the charges, Loretta Lynch. I think what happened is, at some point or another in this thing, and I think this happened very recently, Obama and Lynch basically said to him, listen, she is not going to trial, and she's not going to be indicted. We're not going to bring charges. Okay? And what they said to Comey was something like this. They said, so listen, James, here's the deal. You can present the evidence and you can recommend criminal charges. Okay, we can't really stop you from doing that. But if you do, we're not going to prosecute the case. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. We're gonna take it to a point. We're gonna take the folder. We'll look at it for 8 months or 9 months, and then we'll make a determination that there wasn't enough evidence to go forward with the criminal charges. So he's not going to get what he wants. He's not going to get what justice demands. He's just not going to get it. He can't get it. The president and the attorney general, who is his boss, have said, no, it's not going to happen under any circumstances. Let's get that through your head. So then he has to think about, well, what is he going to do? And this is the part I think is really interesting. My reaction at this point would be, well, F him, James, I don't care. Because I thought, well, maybe he's trying to protect his job or and I even dabbled in some of this, kind of far out there stuff. Oh, they've got stuff on his family, or they're going to, maybe they do. Maybe they have stuff on his family. Maybe they have personal leverage over him. But I was talking with Jeremy Boring about this, and I think he's right. He said they don't need to have that kind of leverage. They don't need to have that kind of leverage. So the question just came up is, from Jay Brands, why didn't Comey recommend and let Lynch be the traitor? This is the point. This is the point that I think is really interesting. That's what I said. I said, Comey's a traitor, and then I thought, well, what if he's not? What if he is in fact a prisoner of war who is blinking out the charges while he's on camera, and everybody else thinks he's, on their team? So look at it this way. If Comey brings the charges and Loretta Lynch says that these charges are not prosecutable, then the case goes away. He goes away. Hillary is not only exonerated, but she's a martyr now. She claims all this right-wing. She can claim all of this right-wing conspiracy and all the rest of it, and then it goes away. If he takes it to trial, if he brings charges, and the charges are dropped, that is better for Hillary Clinton than for what he actually did, which was to make the charges, bring the charges to the American people, and leave it on a plate there for us to see. Now, this is not the primary outcome that I was looking for, but it may be on the world of hardball politics that these people play. It may have been his calculation to do the best thing he could have done. And here's an important distinction that somebody else pointed out to me too. I don't know, I'm quite sure that no one at this level has ever been criminally prosecuted for this kind of activity. Now, my reaction is the same as your reaction. What difference does the level take? It doesn't matter what level. There's no level. You're either obeying the law or you're not. But what you could make the case of, so we go to Petraeus, for example, right? Somebody's going to tell me the truth about this in 15, 20 seconds, because it's a great thing about talking in front of a bunch of smart people with an 8-second delay. I say something, and 15 seconds later, I find out whether there's truth to this or not. But my understanding is that criminal charges were not pressed against Petraeus. He was simply disgraced. He was forced to resign, and there's threats about cutting his pension and busting him in rank and all the rest of it. But he didn't face criminal charges. So what if, there goes our assistant editor, Ryan, going home for the night. After mere 14 hours, I'm going to have to whip these people harder. So back to this thing about Petraeus. He was ruined while he was in office. He was disgraced out of his office, and he was not charged criminally, but he was essentially ruined for life. Now, if Hillary Clinton were currently serving as the Secretary of State, and then Comey decided to bring the charges, then they've got something that they can stick to. They've got something like, I don't know. I think you can make the case for why Comey would make that decision. And whether or not it's the right decision, or whether or not it does enough damage or more damage or whatever, on some level, this is the same thing with John Roberts. There was a lot of talk about why Roberts ruling on Obamacare was handing the election to Romney. Well, the Republicans picked the only person who couldn't run on Obamacare, and that was Romney. But let's just say, for example, and I don't think this is unreasonable. In fact, I think this is how any decent person should start out anyway. Let's just assume for a minute that Comey is in fact a patriot, that he is in fact, after a lifetime of service in law enforcement, is in fact a patriot and an honest man who believes in justice being done. So the question then becomes, what do you do if you're in that position? And I'm asking this not rhetorically. I'm really asking this. What would you do in his position? If he's convinced that he drops the charges off, and then Lynch and Obama together say, hey, we've looked at this evidence, and there's just nothing here. There's just nothing here. It's some kind of a witch hunt. But there's clearly nothing here. So we're not even going to prosecute it. That's how ridiculous these charges are. You see where I'm going with this? To ridicule, to bring the charges, have them, first of all, not be prosecuted, the case doesn't go forward, and to have Loretta Lynch, this is the angle I never saw. I just thought that she'd have to own the fact that this is an airtight case, and then she just has to say, I've decided not to prosecute it. It never occurred to me until this morning. What's so obvious, and the reason I didn't see it was because I don't think like these criminals, and neither do you. But basically, what they decided was, it doesn't matter what Comey brings in. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if Hillary is shaking hands with Putin in a back alley and handing him a thumb drive in exchange for an envelope full of cash. It doesn't matter. If the media is on your side, Loretta Lynch can say whatever she wants to about this case and the evidence, and she will simply say, no, there's no case there. We're throwing it out. Now, if you're James Comey, think about that. If that happens, and that was threatened to him, I don't think he was speculating. I think they said that's exactly what's going to happen. So here's the thing, James. You can either do that, and we'll embarrass you, we'll embarrass the agency, and you're not going to get what you want. Or you can just go up and say, well, we found some evidence, but it wasn't enough for us, and that was the deal. So, if it turns out that Comey was in fact what you and I would call a traitor to this country, if he was in fact a person who'd been bought or who had chickened out or who had rolled over, then his press conference would have been very simple. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to announce that after almost 2 years of study and many agents, as thorough an investigation as ever been conducted by the FBI has determined that there is no criminal evidence here necessary. There is no evidence here of the magnitude necessary to convict Mrs. Clinton. We recommend that no charges be brought. Period. He's done. He's done in 20 seconds. But he didn't do that. He didn't do that. I just saw a text up there. Tiki Rocket says a lot of people are saying that Comey was secretly brilliant. I think he was publicly a coward. Maybe. But go back one more time to the prisoner of war example, because to me that was the insight that I saw here. If you're a prisoner of war and you know that on some level you cannot escape this prison, and you further know that your good name and your reputation as a flyer in the U.S. Navy, let's say, is now going to be turned against you, and that through the use of torture or whatever, you've already signed statements that say, America's a horrible nation full of cold-blooded killers. What do you do as a way of resisting? Not as a way of complying. What do you do as a way of resisting if you're on television? You blink out with your eyes torture. And I think what that press conference did was he was blinking out to everybody. Of course she's guilty. Of course she is. We didn't bring charges because we were told if we did, they would not be accepted. They would not go forward. There's not going to be a grand jury under any circumstances, and we will ridicule you and we will ridicule the charges. So Comey thinks, okay, if I do what I want to do, which is just go public with this thing and say, no, there was overwhelming evidence, then it's his word versus Obama and Loretta Lynch, and much, 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 much more importantly, it's James Comey's word against Obama, Loretta Lynch, Hillary Clinton, and the entire news media. The entire news media, because Loretta Lynch issues a statement that says that insufficient evidence. They're not even close. That's what the New York Times will trumpet, because they want Hillary Clinton to win. That's what they'll trumpet. So if you're in that situation, what do you do? I think Comey, I'm going to mix metaphors here a little bit. I think he's a prisoner of war, and I think he had a very poor set of choices in front of him. And I think he took the charges against Hillary Clinton and nailed them to the door of the church and said, he didn't make a 20-second statement. He tried and convicted her. He tried and convicted her in front of the entire world. And then he said no reasonable prosecutor would bring charges in this case. What he's really saying is every reasonable prosecutor would bring this case. Because if he's not saying that, why does he spend an hour making the case? If his entire mission as a traitor, as a coward, as a spineless weakling, whatever, if his entire mission is to just simply say no, why would he spend an hour not just accusing her, but uniformly, point by point, directly stating that she lied about this? He doesn't say she lied about this. He took every point that she made in her defense and he said, we did find State Department emails, we did find classified emails, we found intent, we found multiple devices. Why would he say why would he waste the time? Here's where I'm kind of going with this, right? Why would he waste the time? If he's buckled under, if he's taken the deal or the money or whatever, he would make a 30-second statement, that'd be the end of it. Why would he say things like, there is also, she not only kept the information on an insecure server, she kept it on many insecure servers and used many devices. Why would he say that? Well, the only reason I can think he would say it is because Hillary Clinton said, her first excuse was, I just didn't want to use multiple. The reason I had my own server was I just wanted everything on my own BlackBerry. I'm just not smart enough to figure out how to use two different devices. So I just wanted to put everything on one. That was my mistake. That's what her defense was in the beginning. And everybody knew that was nonsense. But why would James Comey spend the time to say, she violated this law, she violated this law, she violated this law. By the way, she also had multiple devices. Why would he say that if he's not basically saying to everybody, this is the case. I'm going to go with this because I think this happens to be true. I think James Comey presented the charges to the American people because he knew that if he presented the charges to the Department of Justice, the charges would go away. I think his calculation was, if I nail them to the door, they won't go away. Now, if that's true, just as a postulate, just as a talking point, just for discussion, if that's true, if that's true, then James Comey is a special kind of hero, because if that is true, he's the kind of hero and he's the kind of man who takes his personal honor very seriously, and he is willing to be considered a traitor and a weakling by the part of the country that he cares about, and he accepted that in order to take this course of putting the case on the wall. That's when you get into the kind of moral courage where you find out people who go on missions where basically the spy he deserts, right? He runs away under battle, under fire. And he's picked up by the Soviets, and the Soviets make him a hero, and he spends the rest of his life denouncing America. And you think, I hate this miserable, low-life traitor son of a bitch. I hate this traitor bastard. Well, what if that traitor bastard was actually supplying information that we really needed to the CIA and was willing to undergo that? That's the kind of courage that I just have never been able to contemplate. I'm saying it's a possibility. And I'm saying it explains a lot of stuff that is unexplainable. And look, there's only one real unexplainable thing here, right? There's one unexplainable thing here, and that's what I said a minute ago. The unexplainable thing is, if he is going to recommend to the Justice Department that there are no charges to be brought, then why would he spend 90 minutes listing every single one of the charges? It doesn't make any sense. There's got to be some reason that he would list every single count and every single violation and every single example. He virtually said other people have been charged with this. That doesn't mean we could charge her. And doesn't mean that people in the future can't be charged with this. He's basically putting the evidence in the case out there point by point by point, discrediting everything she ever said factually. He's not saying, well, we think. He said there were multiple emails. They were top secret emails. There were multiple devices. There were multiple servers. The servers were likely cracked. That's the first statement he made that had any ambiguity in it at all. So, I'm ready to hear another explanation for why this happened. But again, if it turns out, this is the paradox. This is it. If he was bought, if he collapsed, if he was bought, threatened, if he just wanted to keep his job, then his press conference would have been a simple statement of the failure of the FBI to find enough evidence to convict. That's what he would have said. And he would have, and look, there's been enough fuss about this. He would have said, yes, we found evidence, but there wasn't enough evidence to convict. That's what he was sent up there to do. That's what he was supposed to do. And that's what he did. But that's not how he did it. So a Guatemalan water snake there basically says the media only reports that no reasonable prosecutor would bring charges. So think about this. Think about this. If you watch the entire thing, he is laying out a case. And as Giuliani pointed out, the terms gross negligence and extreme carelessness are legally interchangeable. He's basically saying she handled that evidence with gross negligence. That's the only explanation I have. I may be wrong about this. Maybe all of this is an effort to hang on to some shred of faith that there are still people out there who put this country above their own careers and, in fact, above their own lives. We're asking 18-year-olds to go out there and get shot in Afghanistan and Iraq. You're telling me a lifelong guy wouldn't be willing to take a bullet for the country? I mean, if Comey thought that he could get away with just saying, no, these are the charges, if he thought that was the best case scenario, I don't get the feeling that a guy who's the director of the FBI for so many years is not the kind of guy who's physically intimidated. He doesn't strike me as that kind of guy. If I was going to be the director of the FBI, knowing that there is an enormous target on my back, maybe even bigger than on the back of the president, but certainly a bigger target than the vice president, secretary of state. Director of the FBI is the man who catches enemy spies, and all of our enemies want the FBI out of the picture. So you have to have physical courage to be the director of the FBI. There's no question about it. You have to have some physical courage just to use your name and stand up against these people. So it's not a question. So Job 19:25a there says, so has the FBI been infiltrated? No, this is the point of my theory. The point of my theory is it's not that the Justice Department, it's not that the FBI has been infiltrated or corrupted. It's that the FBI came to realize that their employers, their bosses, which is the Department of Justice, told them, bring whatever charges you want to, lay them out any way you want to. We are going to ridicule them and we're going to ridicule you. We have the media on our side. And when it's all done, not only will she not be prosecuted, but she will be made into a martyr. We're going to say these charges were never in any position. So the vast right-wing conspiracy is true. And furthermore, not only is she going to be a martyr, not only is she going to be better off than she would have been, but you and your agency are in complete, total disregard. People have just, given up. I can't explain that paradox. And if somebody else can, I'm ready to hear it. So here's the closing of my case here. People will say if Comey was a patriot, he would have ignored the pressure, he would have gone out and brought charges, and he would have said, the devil take the consequences. Likewise, if people say, wait a minute, no, he's a complete weakling, he's been threatened, he's been physically threatened, they've got stuff on him, they've got stuff on his kids, they've got stuff on his girlfriend, and he's been threatened with a gun to his head and all the rest of it. Okay, then that's a course of action too. So you've got two courses of actions. You've got a course of action which is, here are the charges, and you've got a course of action that says, no, she didn't do anything wrong. So why did he go down the middle with this? Not even really down the middle. He went all the way to, here are the charges, and then said, we're not going to recommend prosecution because no reasonable prosecutor would take the case. He's just made 90 minutes of making the case, and every reasonable prosecutor, meaning you and I, know absolutely without a question of a doubt that there's evidence there. Look, there are some details about this that I'm not sure about, and these do reflect on the likelihood of this theory. One of them is, if he had simply brought the charges, would he have been able to go out there and make them? I suppose he could always have a press conference. I don't know. And Reed Hill points out it's the Kobayashi Maru scenario for Comey, which for those of you who may not be Star Trek fans and certainly don't belong in this show, as you can see, the Museum of Star Trek back here, and we got in 2001, we got the Gorn captain, right? So hard to do this in reverse. There. But if anybody has another theory, I'm certainly ready to listen to it. I agree with Occam's razor on this. The simplest explanation is the most likely one. The simplest explanation would be that he was pressured into it and he folded. He didn't bring charges and he folded. Okay. Great. But why the 90-minute condemnation? Why 90 minutes of making the case? Why would he do that if he was bought and sold? So if you are in fact a prisoner of war, your options are very limited. If they use torture on you and force you to sign a document, which in this case would be, we're just going to ignore it and we're going to ridicule you, the agency, you're not going to get your charges and you're not going to get any of this stuff, and we're going to make her into a martyr, and then she's going to be acquitted and exonerated. See, she hasn't been acquitted or exonerated. That's also kind of important. So you got to figure what's going on in James Comey's mind in terms of what is he able to get out, where can he go? He's a guy who's been tortured and beaten up. He's a guy who's got his hands tied behind him in terms of his options. And I think he did what any patriot would do, and that is blink out a signal in Morse code to the American people, basically saying, I signed the paper condemning America because of torture. It makes sense to me. I don't want to believe it. Doesn't mean it's not true. I don't want to believe that he simply caved in. And he didn't. See, they keep coming back to this. He didn't simply cave in, because we know what simply cave in sounds like. It sounds like, now that we went through it with a fine-tooth comb. There were some errors in handling and stuff there, and there were some things that were very questionable. And we have a series of recommendations and would like to discuss this with her in the harshest terms. But no, there was nothing that we could convict on. That's what it sounds like if you're in the bag. And my argument is, he had no way to get out of the bag. There was no out of the bag. So we nailed these papers to the church door and let him out there. Does it matter? I don't know. I still don't see exactly why you wouldn't just go right straight to the American people on this. But here it is again. Right here it is again. You can say we'd go right straight to the American people. That's what we would do. If it were me, that's what I would do. If it were me, I would say, I don't care about your intimidation. I don't care about anything. I don't care about physical threats. This is the future of this country. The country's been good to me. I've had a good life. She's guilty, and I'm going to hold a press conference. Okay, so you hold your press conference, and you lay out the charges. What happens then? The New York Times starts picking your case apart. Obama starts picking your case apart. Loretta Lynch starts picking the case apart, and they begin to tell the story, the narrative story. It's not conspiracy. There's what they did all the time. They did it with Fast and Furious, and they did it with Benghazi. Obama and Clinton knew within 20 minutes of that Benghazi raid that this was an al-Qaeda attack that had been pre-planned, and they got in front of the TV cameras and lied to the American people for 10 days straight, which is how much time it took for the story to die down, and said this was caused by a movie. Why did they do that? Well, they did it because it covered their asses. They'd withdrawn the security instead of providing it. They were in real trouble. There was an election coming up. But why did they think they could get away with it? Why did they think that they could get away with telling the American people that this is about a YouTube movie when everybody knows it's ridiculous? Why? Because they have the lever of the media. They knew that the media would take their side of the story and run with it. And they knew that any Republicans who tried to rebut this story would be absolutely savaged and delegitimized by the press. Now, there's a whole psychology of the Republicans that is different than this. It's a different argument completely. But the more I think about this, the more I think there's some case to it. Look, we know what the truth is. And there's what? There's, I don't know. It used to be so clear. Every time they improve software, it gets harder and harder to use. I don't know how many people are watching the show. It's usually around 200, and then maybe 4,000, 5,000 will watch it on YouTube. So I can scream to that 4,000, 5,000 people all I want to. Think about their equation. It's like, okay, so Bill Whittle knows the truth about us, and Bill Whittle's going to go out there and he's going to blow every single horn he can, and he's going to talk on Rush Limbaugh, and he's going to talk on Glenn Beck, and he's going to talk on the Levin show, and he's going to make these accusations. How's that any different than the birther accusations? It's simply going to be ignored by the media, discredited by the media, and it didn't happen. One of the things that people, I've talked about this a few times before too, one of the things that is the most, in fact, I think this is the most powerful thing with the media being in the tank to this degree on your side. You would think that the problem is that with the press that biased, they would not report stories that are detrimental to the candidate, and they would go after the opponents the way they went after Sarah Palin and Trump and all the rest of them. But that's not it. What it is much, much more powerful than that. The biggest motivator of human behavior is social proof. When Fox News claims that this Benghazi thing is treason, impeachable, incompetent, impeachable treason, if Fox News makes that claim, and NBC, CBS, ABC, CNN, MSNBC all say that's ridiculous, then you get the effect that we already have, which is when you ask many people in the country, where did you hear that story? What's on Fox News? Fox News. I guess you heard that on the Rush Limbaugh show. They put a cyst around it. You see, there's a little cyst around Fox News now. And so that any story that's broken by Fox News, the liberals will say, it's Fox News. What do you expect from Fox News? They're the ones that were talking about whether or not Obama was born in the country, for God's sakes. They're a bunch of lunatics. And that's already happened. That doesn't have to happen. Fox News has been discredited for a long, long time, very effectively, by the fact that nobody else covers the stuff, unless they're dragged into it. And there you go. As pointed out, John Connor just pointed out his dad was not a natural-born citizen. He should not have been elected president. If we'd had a press, he wouldn't have been elected president, and not just for that reason. Barack Obama was a babe left in the woods, and he was raised by feral communists. I mean, there's just no question about this. It's not conspiracy theory. There's just no question about it. There's thousands of pieces of evidence that Barack Obama's mother was a communist and that his father was a communist. You call him a socialist if you want to, but he came to America for 2 years, decided he didn't like it, and then went back to socialist Kenya. He decided he didn't think America was socialist enough. He goes back to Kenya, talks about 100% confiscation of all private property. That's a communist. That's his dad. His mom was a lifelong communist. His grandparents who raised him were communists. His mentor, Frank Davis, was a communist, well-known communist. And the person that launched his political career, Bill Ayers, was a communist and a terrorist. Any one of these things would have gotten him thrown out. When his preacher says, "Goddamn America," and Barack Obama has the nerve to say that I never heard him say that, 20 years is, what's that, 1,000 Sundays? Something like that. He sat in there for 1,000 Sundays, and Reverend Wright never once said anything anti-American? Because I think if that were true, and then Reverend Wright comes out with a "Goddamn America," I think the crowd would gasp. If your preacher came out at a church service, or your rabbi or whatever came out at a service and said "Goddamn America," what would you do? You'd probably gasp. And then you would boo, and then you get up and leave. That's not what happened to the audience in that church of his. They cheered. They cheered because that's all they heard. That's all he heard too. My point is something that is so obviously logically impossible, namely that Barack Obama could be in that church for 20 years and not heard or any of this kind of rhetoric from us, is so patently, completely unbelievable. And everybody bought it because everybody in the press said, well, he just wasn't there. What do we say? Next story. He wasn't there. Okay. See, this is what happens when you control information. And look, I'm just taking me as an example because I'm about the smallest fry I can think of in this particular area. But they don't care what I say. If it turns out that I landed on it exactly right, I know I landed on it right about him being raised by communists, no question about that. But let's just say I was right about this Comey thing, and I put up a firewall and it gets seen by 1 million people, or 5 million people, or 8, or whatever. What difference is that going to make to them? The 8 million views or the 20 million views that I might get off of a really crackerjack firewall will be views from conservatives who already know all this stuff, who are absolutely convinced that she's guilty, and they don't care. They don't care. They know they don't care about anything except for 51% of the popular vote. That's all they care about. And if it turns out that 30% or 5% or 40% or 45% or 49.9% of the country is 100% convinced that they're absolute liars and traitors, but 50.1% of the country doesn't think that, then that's all they care about, because that means they stay in office, they keep their power. One of the things that we just need to do, and I've been talking with David Horowitz quite a bit about this, because David was one of them. He was, in fact, hey, there goes Ryan, who's our social media person. Hey, Ryan. Blah. Nobody even listens to me in this place, honestly. I say goodnight to people and they walk past me like I'm not even here. I might as well just, it's just so disrespectful. Look, I think there's a lot of evidence to this. And I talked about this effect in Loch Ness socialism. People believe in the Loch Ness monster because news media has said there's a monster, and they've shown blurry pictures. And I have said I believed it too. I saw a photograph of what looked like the flipper of a plesiosaur, one out-of-focus underwater photograph, and I said, that's all the evidence I need. Of course it's there. And I wanted to believe it so much that I never got to the stage of thinking, well, if it's an air-breathing dinosaur the size of a bus, we should see it 10 times an hour, every day, for 1,000,000 years. Why could I have not gotten to that conclusion instantly? When I was thinking that there was a Loch Ness Monster, before I started thinking about any of this stuff, I knew that a plesiosaur had to be an air-breathing dinosaur, and that's what I believed. I believed in it because I was told that this was the case, that it was, and it was fun. I wanted to believe in it. I really wanted to believe in it. Everybody wants to believe in that kind of magic. Who wouldn't want to see who wouldn't want to see a real dinosaur today? People want to believe in this stuff, and it shuts down your logical, critical facilities. So, what do? They made the calculation. It was so bald-faced that it's an indication that they not only know that we know, but they don't. This is, you know what? I got to write this down. 1 second. Yeah. I said earlier that this thing was so blatant and flagrant that it was that they were insulting the American people's intelligence. And they weren't insulting our intelligence. They were insulting our willpower. So what I was just about to say spontaneously, because this is a line I want to use, and I think this really sums up the whole thing. It's the Obama and Lynch and Hillary and Bill not only know that we know what's going on, they don't care that we know. They don't care. They don't care. Because if 49% of the country thinks that she's an absolute treasonous felon, they don't care. They care about 50.001% of the American population. And the number of people who are at that threshold is not even close. So the question is, does Comey bringing charges that are immediately dismissed by the Attorney General's office reduce that number or increase that number? Or alternatively, by posting this thesis on the wall and making the case, is that going to, there goes Carla, my God, it's a mass migration. So I guess drink time is over in there. We close the wet bar. Is that why everybody's leaving? It's been cocktail time here since 9 o'clock in the morning. It's going to start at 7 o'clock in the morning tomorrow. Folks, I got to tell you, the more I think about this, the more I think this is really it. That's the missing piece for me. If Comey had gone to the press and just said it, then they would have denied it, and they know that by denying it, they could make her into a martyr. They may not have to reveal the evidence. And so what if 49% of the country thinks she's a bald-faced liar? They don't care. The one thing they do know is that every single hour, every single minute and second that ticks off the clock, the balance of power shifts in their favor. In other words, if they scrape by with 49, this is numbers, obviously I'm just using hypotheticals. If they scrape by with 49% of the country convinced that she's an absolute liar now, in 10 years, when these millennials grow up with their full indoctrination in their safe spaces and she promises to buy them free college, then the number of people that'll know that she's a pathological liar will fall to 30%. And another 20 years after that, the number of people will fall to 5%, and that's pretty much it. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it until I hear better. I haven't heard better. So let's just see if we can answer a couple of the questions here, just to say that we did, because I covered a lot of ground there, but I'm really happy about it. I love doing that aspect of the show. It really helps me think clearly about things here. So I'll just go through these real quick. Kevin Kilcoin says, why the red herring about whether emails were classified or not? Simply moving them off the official system is enough, and setting up their own server is prima facie evidence of their intent. I know I read that earlier. I'm just going to answer the specific questions now. We know why the red herring was placed by the people that are trying to cause the diversion. We know full well why the Clintons wanted to make this about whether or not these were secret documents, because by doing so, that's a fallback position. In other words, if she claimed that her defense was, no, we didn't have any emails on the server, that was her first defense. No, we didn't have any. Well, that's proven false. Well, it's not really about whether we had emails on the server. It's about whether or not there was any classified information done, whether or not we did any harm. And when that defense failed, no, we found classified information. Then you fall back to the, well, it may be classified information, but it wasn't marked classified at the time I read it. And they just keep walking back and standing there, and not standing their ground. They're falling back to prepared defensive positions. And we, like idiots, all the Republicans, like morons, simply walk right into that kill box that I talk about all the time. They simply walk across the no man's land, and they walk through the artillery barrage, and then they go through the barbed wire, and then they take their machine gun hits, and then the hand grenades. And by the time the assault is over, every single one of us is dead on the ground, and they are up there laughing their butts off. Because we're so stupid that we simply agree to their language, to their rules, to their goalposts. We just agree. I am going to do a next firewall on this phenomenon, because the first one's just about Hillary and Comey and all that. But the next one is going to be about the psychology of not only Republican legislators, but of many Republicans, in fact, for the American people. David Horowitz used a term that I like very much that I want to use. He said that virtually everybody in Congress, virtually every Republican in Congress, wants to be what he called a gold star Republican. In other words, they want to be seen by the Democrats, which means by the media, which means by the country. See, this is the lever. By the Democrats, which means by the media, which means by the country. I got to do that one more time, too. I'm sorry, I just don't want to lose any of this stuff because I have a bad habit of doing that. Okay, so what these people want to be, like McCain, for example, is they want to be seen as mavericks. McCain is our kind of Republican. Why is I'm talking about back in 2006, 7, that kind of thing. Okay, why is McCain beloved by the press? McCain is beloved by the press because McCain is willing to contradict and argue with Republicans. He's willing to argue with Republicans. He's willing to make their case for them from inside. I'm not saying McCain is a spy or anything. I'm just saying McCain loved the stroke of being like, I'm the only good Republican in the country. I'm the only Republican they want to have on the Tonight Show. I'm the only Republican that wants to do all of this stuff, So, boom. But they don't like John McCain. And the thing that David has pointed out, because he used to be one of them, I was never one of these people. When I say I was more liberal, I just simply meant I was swimming in the stream with everybody else in the pond. But I wasn't leading other fish downstream, and I wasn't even poking around downstream. I was just floating there. I didn't care. I was just floating. But David Horowitz was one of these people. He was one of these people that started this whole thing. And he has said, you do not understand. We refuse to understand what kind of people we're dealing with here. And he ought to know, because he was one of them. We're dealing with Bill Ayers is here. We're dealing with people that are ready to plant bombs to get their political views enforced. Decent, honorable people like us can't get our heads around this. We can't. We think there's a confusion. We think, well, maybe they misunderstood us. We think that maybe if we're nice to them, maybe I know. See, they've been calling us racists all this time. The press has. I have a great idea, says the conservative mindset. I have a great idea. How about in 2012, we agree that all 4 debates are going to be hosted by liberals? See how honest we are? How would we do that if we were racist? If we were racist, we wouldn't do that. See, we're not the bad people you made us out to be. We're not racist. By all means, have all 4 debates hosted by liberal hosts. Well, Candy Crowley cost us the election, in my opinion. So the question is, did that get us anything? By allowing 4 liberal hosts of the 4 debates, 3 presidential, 1 vice presidential? Did that change the way the Republicans were covered? Did the news media say, you know what, we thought they used to be racist, but we have to admit this is very decent of them? No, they laugh at it. They think it's funny because they're evil. I know that sounds a powerful word to use, but I don't know what else to call it. I'm not talking about the bulk of the country. The bulk of the country is actually quite virtuous. I talked to somebody a week ago who turned out to be a big Hillary supporter, and I said, she may be in jail next week. And she said, what about it? I said, about the emails. And she goes, no, she's been cleared about all this. This was 2 weeks ago probably. They think she's been cleared about all this. Do you know why they think that? They think that because if she hadn't been cleared about it, they would be looking at her in jail, and we'd be reading about her being guilty in the New York Times. And we don't read about her being guilty in the New York Times, therefore she's not guilty. Nicholas McAfee says, Bill, is it possible that Comey refused to recommend charges because he had proof? This is another angle that I meant to talk about. Nicholas, this is all you. I'm going to work this into the firewall, and I may say that I owe a lot of this to a bunch of my friends, but this is all you. I just had not seen this. I thought about it before, but I hadn't put it together with the Comey statement and so on. Bill, is it possible that Comey refused to recommend charges because he had proof of all the people who knew she was breaking the law and did nothing to stop it? All of those who remained silent would have to be charged with felonies, including President Obama, and the fallout would upset the entire apple cart. Did the FBI let her walk in order to shelter other guilty scum, but also to prevent instability? That is a profound insight. We were talking for the last hour about what lever they might have on Comey. We'll go with the assumption that he's a patriot and loves his country. What lever do they have on him? This is a profoundly good point. You can say, well, I'm going to the press anyway. And they say, okay, here's the deal, James. If you go to the press with this evidence, because you've got evidence, then that evidence is going to show that not only did Hillary Clinton break all of these rules and utterly disdainfully mishandle classified information, but 4 of these top secret emails were either to or from the President of the United States. Because it's inconceivable that he didn't know that she had her own account. All of her mail came to her account. It didn't go to a .gov account. It went to clintonfoundation.org. So if the President of the United States has ever written an email to his Secretary of State, which I think is rather likely in this day and age, then the President knew that she had an external server and that she was dealing with classified information outside of the government system. And all the communications with the generals and everybody's complicit. I know this sounds like a Looney Tune thing, but it's not. This is not a conspiracy. This is not. This is Occam's razor at work. This is the simplest explanation to explain what we know. So now Comey says, okay, now what do we do? Now, if I go public, I am going to have to indict, or I'm going to have to recommend we bring charges against the Secretary of State and the Democratic nominee, the Attorney General, the previous Attorney General, the current Secretary of State, the Vice President of the United States, the President of the United States, likely a large number of top Pentagon brass, and God knows how many senators and how many representatives and so on. Because they thought that they could get away with this. They thought, the people outside of Clinton thought it was just standard operating practice. Okay, that's what she wants to do. That's what she wants to do. Because they did not know what was going on with the Clinton Foundation. That's why she set up her own server. But think about it. Everybody bought into this because they thought it was a non-event. And somehow somebody got the signal out. And now they're in real trouble. So now what do you do if you're James Comey and they tell you this? If they tell you this, what do? If they would not just make the announcement. They're ready for this guy. They've been getting ready for him for 2 years. I think it's possible that they could have appealed to his sense of patriotism and said, Mr. Comey, you know as well as I do what this evidence contains. This is the private conversation that's had on tarmacs and enclosed rooms and so on. Okay. You know that she's guilty, and we know that she's guilty. You also know that if she's guilty, then the president's guilty, and so is everybody else who ever got an email from her. Because they knew, or should have known, that this was against the rules. So now, you're not just bringing charges against a former Secretary of State. You are bringing charges against 2 attorney generals, who are your bosses. You're bringing charges against Pentagon officials. You're bringing charges against the president and the vice president and the Congress. And here's the one thing that you didn't write, Nicholas, that just occurred to me. Because then they can also say, and by the way, James, you're bringing charges against yourself and your agency. Your job. Why did I not see this until this second? Why did I not see this until this second? It's the Loch Ness Monster effect. Whose job is it to find out whether or not domestic politicians or anybody inside the United States is leaking secure information? Whose job is that? It's the FBI's job. So this whole thing went on for 4 years under the nose of the FBI, and they either didn't catch it or didn't think it was worth reporting. I'll bet you that's it. I'll bet you anything that's it. So you indict the entire government. Now look, people like us think, swell, awesome, finally got some evidence. But that's not how the world works. And for the calculations that I've mentioned earlier, they don't care if 30% or 40% of the country can see right through this. They don't care about that. They're not going to try to convince us. They don't have to. All they have to do is outvote us. I think that's it. I really think that's the lever. This firewall's going to kick some ass, man. If I tried to write this before this, I knew I'd get a lot out of talking about it. I've gotten so many different pieces of this puzzle from so many different people. And Nicholas McAfee, I have to tell you, you provided an absolutely, really insightful look at something that's so clearly obvious that no one could see it. It's like the confession out on the coffee table when the police are searching the house. It's absolutely brilliant. But as I say, I think if I take that one more step, the president, the Congress, the Attorney General, where does it end? Wait a minute. What about the FBI? Whose job is it to make sure this didn't happen? Why has nobody talked about this? I have not heard this before, ever. I've been following this story for a year and a half. Why did this not ever come up? It's the Loch Ness Monster. That's what it is. It's social proof. It's social proof. All of us are guilty of it. I discovered the power of social proof about a year ago when I went down to Tampa, and I was given a squadron call sign by an actual group of Air Force pilots. I always thought I was immune to social proof, but what I meant by that was I'm immune to the social proof that the Democrats are dishing out because I know it's a lie. I make a living pointing out that it's a lie. But I am not immune to social proof. And the reason I say that is because I found myself doing anything. I would do anything not to embarrass myself in front of those guys. And I did. See, it's easy to talk about social proof when you talk about the social proof that most people are falling for. But all of us have these blind spots. And I came out of that weekend down there thinking, you know what? I really realized I would have done anything to not be further embarrassed by these guys. I have such respect for them, and I'm being so badly humiliated. And every word I say is being twisted and turned against me. I'm just going to sit here, shut up, and curl up into a ball. Yeah, okay. No. We're gonna get to a point here. You know, this is the point. I don't want to forget it. The close of this firewall message is I'll just give you the close right now. In fact, I think I'm probably gonna have to close the show right now. With due respect to Kevin Jordan, David Proctor, Lisa Owen, Kevin Jordan again, who brought up all kinds of great points that have been included in this discussion I've had earlier. I don't see the need to trample this into the ground. But here's the point, the closing point of this firewall. You know, I know you guys forgive me for making these notes. It's embarrassing. I hate the dead air. But it's like, I have to do this because otherwise I'll forget it. So here's the point of the firewall. I'm going to basically say to the camera and say, so look, ladies and gentlemen, here's the score. And this is not up for discussion. This is the situation now as it exists. The President of the United States is in collusion with the Clintons, that multiple laws have been broken, and that the agencies designed to protect us have not. The President of the United States has not protected the American people. The State Department has not protected the American people. The Republican opposition has not protected the American people. The Internal Revenue Service has not protected the American people. The National Security Agency has not protected the American people. Most of the political generals who are appointees in the Pentagon have not protected the American people, and they continue their social engineering experiments at the expense of readiness and combat efficiency. And now we find out that the premier law enforcement agency in the country either will not or cannot protect us, cannot protect the American people. What does that mean? Well, that means that we're going to have to protect ourselves, right? That's where it all goes in the end. It all goes into the end. It all goes back to the beginning. It's like every single creation myth in the world. The snake ends up biting its tail and forms a perfect circle. It begins with and it ends with we the people. That's all we have. That's all we have. That's all there is. They've got us completely surrounded. Poor bastards. It's going to be us. It's going to be the American people that's going to stop this. And the one thing that we did get before this horrible dose of horrible medicine that knocked the wind out of all of us was we got a little bit of sugar on that same teaspoon, because we found out that an entire country can simply stop. They can just wake up and stop. When you think about the social proof and the going with the stream in Great Britain, it makes this thing look ridiculous. There's no conservative opposition in Great Britain. Nothing like what we have here. They have people that are slightly less, the Tories are slightly less big government. There's no Tories. I've never heard of a Tory talking about dismantling the national health system. It's not part of their, this conservative redoubt that takes up 150 million people doesn't exist in Britain. And when we did the, I haven't read the comments on the Brexit firewall. I'm sure they're the same. Scott Ott reported to me a number of comments on the special edition that we did on the Brexit for Right Angle. And the one thing he said that was constantly coming up was he said, many of these comments are coming from Brits who are thanking us because they have never heard this argument put this way as a good thing. They've never heard it described as a good thing ever. And they think that they're all alone, and they think that they made a mistake because everybody's telling them they made a mistake. And by viewing this video, they realize no, they did the right thing. So that's the hand. That's the hand. The hand is they have all of the power, and they don't have all of the power. They have a lot of power. They have the power of the megaphone. They have the power to select what gets said and what doesn't get said. They have enormous power. But they also have an enormous weakness. Yes, thank you, Dave Big Booty. The media has not protected us either. They also have an enormous weakness. And the weakness is this. Their entire scam, and the same with the EU scam, and it's the same scam, by the way. The scam is we want money and power that we didn't earn. Dinesh D'Souza's movie is all about that. He said, what's the most valuable thing in the world? If you're a thief, he said his time in prison made him realize that every crime is theft. All of it is theft. Murder is theft. Rape is theft. Obviously, robbery and burglary are theft. It's all theft. It's all about taking something that doesn't belong to you. All of it. He said, all of it is theft. So he said, look, if you've got a criminal mind and you're not somebody, with a low IQ who decides to hold up a 7-Eleven or something, you can't foresee the consequences of that. What if you've got that kind of mindset, that kind of defective mindset, and you've got a high IQ? What do you do? Well, you know that you're not smart enough and you're not hardworking enough to go out and make your own profit. So what do? You realize that you are smart enough to buy votes from dupes, so long as you make sure that they never get the information that they're supposed to have. Then you can win this Ponzi scheme. So while they have all of the resources, they have one enormous, monumental, terribly, terribly dangerous weakness. Sorry. Here's the weakness. The weakness is, as Tammy I almost said Tammy Wynette. I only worked with her for 3 years. Tammy Bruce. As Tammy Bruce said to me one time after an event in Phoenix, she said, their problem, Bill, is that they're papering up the windows, that their entire plan works in the dark, and they have a lot of paper, and they have a lot, she didn't say this, she said the paper. I'm elaborating on the relative. They have the rhetoric, they have a lot of paper, they have a lot of paint, they have a lot of tape, they have a lot of workers. But the problem is that one tear in the paper that's keeping the light out will put some light into the room. They don't have a darkness generator. They can't create darkness. All they can do is keep out the light. They can keep out the truth. They can get away with everything if they can keep out the truth. And the truth is so obvious that you wake up someday and say, how did I believe in the Loch Ness Monster? How did I believe it? What could I have been thinking? You weren't thinking. And that's okay. You're doing what everybody else was doing. You don't have time to break down every decision you make in the course of a day and figure out whether it's logical or not. If there are pictures of the Loch Ness Monster that are published in photographs and in magazines, and you could say, okay, it's the National Enquirer or whatever, but you know what? I kind of want to believe it. There's a picture. I'm going to hang on to that. So you believe it because everybody else believes it. You're not told to believe it. This is the thing that people got to get clear. Sometimes people accuse us of, oh, so you're saying there's a giant conspiracy with these, why don't you bring out your tinfoil hats? You're saying that we're transmitting mind control rays out of the basement of the White House? Not saying that at all. Not saying that at all. What I'm saying is, it is the water that all of the fish swim in. So we think we're swimming against other fish. We think we're a line of fish, and they're a line of fish. And the battle is between two fishes. But it's not. The battle is between our fish and the sea, and the fish on the other side. It's not just the fish on the other side. It's the ocean too. We're at war with the ocean. We are so susceptible to this that occasionally we are so susceptible to the social proof without knowing it. See, that's why social proof works. If you point out that you're a victim of social proof, then you're the kid at the end of the parade who says he's not wearing any clothes, and it falls apart. Falls apart. So the whole reason social proof works is because you don't realize it's working on you, in the same way that I didn't realize until I was flying home that I would have done anything for those guys down there. I would have, whatever. I did not want to be humiliated by these guys. I wanted to be accepted by them because that's what I wanted to be my entire life. It was a tremendously powerful effect on my mind. So we're at war with the ocean that we swim in, and we don't even see it. And the reason I know that this has this kind of power over us, because this is not a rhetorical question either. This is a genuine question that I'm asking everybody who's watching this video to just think about for a moment. How many times have you ever heard Rush Limbaugh or me or Donald Trump or Glenn Beck or Michelle Malkin or Hugh Hewitt or Mark Levin, how many times have you heard anyone say something that made you gasp, just gasp, and say, I can't believe he said that? And then you realize that what he said was exactly what you believe in. But you're so amazed that somebody would just come out and say something that's so contrary to the ocean that you're just stunned. The biggest example of this for me, this is why Rush Limbaugh is the king. Rush Limbaugh is the king because of this. I remember hearing, I didn't hear it on the radio because I don't listen to anybody. I don't listen to anybody. I don't read anybody. I don't have time, and it's good that I don't. But I remember somebody telling me once that, this is all the social proof about global warming, all the social proof about how bad it is to have wealth, all the social proof against the rich and jets and the symbols and all of it is so pervasive. It's so pervasive that when I heard the story that Rush Limbaugh took one of his private jets to a golf tournament in Houston from Florida, and in mid-route, he realized that he'd left his golf clubs behind. He bragged about it. He said, so we were on EIB1, and I made a phone call, and I had my golf clubs put onto EIB2, and they arrived about an hour after we touched down on ground. I used my second private jet to fly my golf clubs to where I was going in my first private jet. And I went, what? That's so wrong. I mean, you just completely wasted that entire flight and all that fuel and all that. And then I just stopped. It's like, wait a minute. Of course he did. He earned his money. He sold an awful lot of Snapple. He earned his money. He can have 50 private jets. I don't think the carbon is having a significant effect on this atmosphere at all. This is the point I'm making. I gasped because somebody had actually demonstrated what I believe publicly. It's like the boy says he's not wearing any clothes. I just went, holy crap. Holy crap. How did he get away with that? And then you start thinking, man, that took a lot of guts. How many times have you ever heard anybody come out against being called a racist or whatever? Say, I don't care what you call me. I don't care. I'm not gonna back off on the race thing. I'm not gonna back off on the Islam thing. I don't care what you call me. How many times have you seen somebody do that and say, hey, man, that took guts. Took guts to talk about that. Why? He's not in any danger of being assassinated. I certainly don't feel like I'm in any physical danger. I might be in a little bit more than most people, but it's not anything I think about. And it's not anything I want to think about, because if you start thinking about that, your life becomes a prison. So how many times have you heard somebody say something and you've said to yourself, I can't believe that he said that? Not in a bad way, but in a good way. Like, I can't believe finally somebody said this. How many times has that happened to you? Happens to me all the time. What does that mean? That means that during that instant when you've been looking at the other fish, at the blue fish, that's an instant when you began to realize that the ocean is moving, the currents of the ocean are moving their way. That not only do we have to swim in the opposite direction of these fish and have to beat them, but as we continue to try to swim to the other line, the line continues to push us back. It just continues to take us with us on this current of social beliefs. And every now and then we wake up, because somebody will wake us up, and we'll go, oh my God. And then we forget again. And it's not our fault. Somebody just pointed out Ben Shapiro. Brent Cates did. Brent, you didn't make does anybody remember who made these cups? I'm so embarrassed that I put a post about this. I cannot remember who sent me this. We want to buy some from you. We love them. We want to sell them. So that's it, That's it. It's the gasp. Ted Nugent. Yeah, there you go. Ted Nugent. What do you do? What do you think when somebody goes on The View or something and says, and they say, so you're going to tell me you have your guns for hunting? No, I have my guns to kill people. I have my guns to kill bad guys. I can't believe he said that. Right in front of everybody. Yeah. So, Job 1925A, or might be, it's got to be Job 1925A, said, thank God for new media. Folks, I've talked an awful lot about the rise and fall of civilization. I've talked about end times. I've talked about the loss of all of our values. I've talked about all these things, and now there's a drinking game going on. I see it. I'm not that dumb, Every time I mention the letters R or K, somebody has to take a drink someplace. So he did the whole RK thing that explains it biologically. But this is what I'm going to leave you with tonight. There's no one here to protect us except ourselves. We're not powerless. They want us to think we're powerless, but they're not. And we are, without question, exhibiting all of the classic symptoms of the end stages of a civilization prior to its collapse. There's no question about it. All of the symptoms that brought down all of these empires are here in America, and they're getting stronger every day. And all of this would be enough to make you want to just ammo up and move to Montana, but no other civilization prior to us has had the means for common people to talk to other common people. They've never had that ability. They have never had a chance to get away from the London Times, or to get away from the priesthood, or to get away from whatever, from the Pharaoh's court. They've never had a chance to talk to each other and wake each other up in the way that we're doing that right now. That has never happened before. So this is not a guarantee by any means that we're going to escape that fate. But it is a shot. It's a chance. It's a door that is not completely closed in the way that it has been. If you believe this arcade theory, and I do, and also the civilizational collapse theory, which deals with like C and for civilization and V for vigor of the civilization, it makes perfect sense to me. And so, in some sense, we are doomed to live in a time where biologically our society and everything we love about it is going to collapse around us. That's why we call ourselves conservatives. We want to hang on to it because we like it. But you and I are having a conversation of a kind right now. And even if you watch this later on YouTube, most of you will be watching this on YouTube, not at the time I recorded it, which is 7:41 p.m. Pacific time on the 6th of July, 2016. You may be watching this a day later, a month later, a year later. Every now and then, I shouldn't admit this, because I actually am genuinely a pretty humble guy. I've just had it beaten into me. I just had enough pain beaten into me that it beat all the ego out of me. But the one thought I occasionally allow myself, the one egotistical thought that I occasionally allow myself is this: I wonder how far into the future will be the last person to either read or see something that I've done. It's an interesting question, actually, because if you could make the case that, no, Bill, they're going to be reading or watching this video 50,000 years from now, okay. If, on the other hand, if you could see the future and find out, no, there's going to be just this utter collapse and it's just going to go right down the drain, and the herbivores are going to take over, and, you know, people watched it for another year or 10 or 15. That's an interesting question. How long will this last? How long will this message last, or whatever message? Anyway, the point is the message is getting out, and the point is that we don't have to unpaper all of the windows. All we have to do is rip a hole in it, and the light comes in on its own. And once the light comes in, it's not dark in there anymore. And once it's not dark anymore, you can see what's going on. You can just see what's going on. Yeah, this is a corker. This will be fun for you guys. It'll be fun for me too, because usually I don't connect these to Stratosphere lounges in anything like this degree of immediacy. But I'm going to shoot it tomorrow morning, and I'm going to write it tomorrow morning. I think I should write it tonight, but I'm tired, and I want to get it right. I'm going to get to bed early, and I'm going to go and knock this thing out, and I'm going to hope this comes through. I always have the video I can go back and watch. All 2 hours of it anyway, hour and 33 minutes of it. All right, so here's the big close, guys. I don't want to tell you, that this was secretly good news. I'm not nearly that naive or stupid to say that the result we got was actually secretly the best possible result. It absolutely wasn't. I do begin to believe it wasn't the worst possible result, but it was bad. It was the end of the rule of law in this country. For whatever reason. If the FBI can be silenced, for whatever reason, social proof reason, corruption reason, whatever, if the FBI can be silenced for whatever reason, then there's nobody. It's just us. Isn't that our entire theory of everything? Isn't that everything that we believe? Isn't that why we arm ourselves? Isn't that why we believe in self-defense? Isn't that why we believe in the death penalty for people that transgress standards of behavior that are so abhorrent that they're no longer human in the way that we consider humans to be humans? Isn't this self-reliance and self-sufficiency everything that we believe in? And isn't it everything that we're proud of? When I realized this today, when I did that little countdown in my head, I thought, yeah, the president won't defend us, the Congress won't defend us, the Pentagon won't defend us, and now the Justice Department won't defend us, and the FBI won't defend us. We're on our own. It's just us. And in another country, I think people would have been absolutely terrified by that they would think it's over. I had exactly the opposite realization. I had the realization, I said, if I could get everybody to see this, if I could get everybody to realize this, that no one's going to protect us. This government is not going to protect us. We have to protect ourselves. I felt really good. I got a little spring in my step. Because we're from the future, man. And it's not going to happen on my watch. Some comedian told this joke. It was the stupidest joke, is why I liked it so much. I don't remember what the guy's name was. He was basically saying, I was in a bar the other night, and this guy got really pretty abusive, and he knocked my drink out of my hand. He was starting to get real down on his girlfriend, really started to verbally abuse her. And he swung around, knocked the drink out of my hand, and it knocked the watch right off my wrist and onto the floor. And then he started pushing his girl around, and then he stood on my watch as well. And then he said, and I decided to do something, because I was not going to let that man strike that woman, not on my watch. Not going to let him strike that woman, not on my watch. I thought that was so bloody clever. All right, so go home. I'm not saying be happy. I'm saying be aware, be awake. Understand what our weaknesses are and understand what our strengths are. And we do not ever play to our strengths. There's one more thing I just have to say, because this will be the next one, about the Republican form of this kind of Stockholm syndrome. But I think most people know that I'm a Ted Cruz guy and have been. And I think most of you also know I have enormous problems with Donald Trump. I don't have a never Trump kind of level of problem with him, because I know what she is. I don't know what he'll be, but I know what she is. I can't imagine anything worse than her. So I'm voting for Trump. And my enthusiasm for him is increasing hourly. Put that aside for a second. I'm a Ted Cruz guy. I thought Ted Cruz was the closest to my beliefs by a wide margin. And Ted Cruz released a statement about the Clinton thing. And it was a 4 or 5 paragraph statement. And it read something like, if we allow the torch of freedom to be extinguished, then we will... It sounded to me like a really smart 9th grader who was trying to win an essay contest in his civics class. Ted's a brilliant, smart guy. He's the smart guy. And he wrote a 5-paragraph, measured call on the Constitution, remember our founding fathers and faith in our documents and all this other stuff. And that's what got us into this trouble, because Ted doesn't realize who we're dealing with. I think Donald Trump really does. Donald Trump didn't write a 5-page essay on what's wrong with the system. Donald Trump said the system is rigged, which is essentially what Cruz spent 5 paragraphs trying to say. And that's why Ted Cruz is not the nominee. And Donald Trump is. Cruz is so much better qualified than Donald Trump in every way, except for the one that matters the most. He cannot communicate to the American people what he wants to do. He can't do it. He cannot do it. I could have helped him. I don't know if I could have gotten him over the hill, but I could have helped him communicate what he wants, because he will spend 5 paragraphs of very patriotic, parchment and quill, Bill of Rights, waving flags, soaring eagle, all of this stuff he's going to lay out there, and people don't care. Donald Trump said the system is rigged. Period. Brilliant. Now, I don't know what the poll situation is. Sometimes they say they're neck and neck. Sometimes other people are saying Hillary's opened up the biggest lead so far. She's got a 10-point lead, a 12-point lead on him, something like that. There's one thing I will tell you, though, folks, in terms of giving you something to hang on to a little bit. Donald Trump is calling her a criminal. He calls her Crooked Hillary. This firewall is going to be called Crooked Hillary in the FBI. Everybody should use that term. From now on, every time you mention her, you should say Crooked Hillary. Do you know why Donald Trump's going to beat Hillary Clinton? Because he understands on a visceral level. It's not an academic thing for him. He's a New York street fighter on some level, right? Somebody, does you a favor, you do him a favor. Somebody pushes you in the hallway, you push him back. Donald Trump fights, and he fights back in the way that he's being fought at. They're coming at him with a knife, he goes back with a knife. He doesn't orate to people. He says the system is fixed. It is fixed. I said somewhere, it might have been on the live thing we did yesterday, that if you really wanted to make this country change, Donald Trump should pick for his vice president Bernie Sanders. That would be something. That would be something. If I could pull, I think if I were Donald Trump, I think that's where I'd go. I'd pick Bernie Sanders. And I would say, hey, listen, Bernie and I couldn't be more apart. He thinks business is bad. I think it's good. He thinks money's disgusting. I like to take a bath in it. But that's what America's about, discussing these ideas. The president's not the king. He can't just order things done. So if something happens to me and Bernie's president, he'll be limited by the Constitution. But we are going to change the system now. If he did something like that, it would be earth-changing, because Bernie supporters are supporting Bernie for the same reason that Trump supporters are supporting Trump. They claim to hate each other, but they're the same emotional. They're coming from the exact same emotional place, exact same place. They do not believe in the system anymore, and they want to see it changed. That's the force out there. It's split among two parties now, but if you were to put that force together and run the common sense resistance, I always laughed at the idea of running for president. After this, I've decided I'm not going to laugh at it anymore. There is no bar low enough for these people. So, but let me just say this. Yeah, Ohio Coastie says he's not that Trump is intelligent. He's cunning. He's like a predator. He absolutely is. He's got something. And he's got something that Ted Cruz didn't have, and something that Mitt Romney didn't have, and something that John McCain didn't have. But it's something that Obama did have. Hillary doesn't have it. Obama does. McCain didn't have it. Romney didn't have it. Trump does have it. Cruz didn't have it. And neither did Rubio or any of the rest. And what Donald Trump has is he has the ability to make one sentence come out of his gut without thinking about it that expresses what everybody in the country is actually thinking. That gasp that I talked about a little while ago, he makes people gasp by saying things that nobody assumed could ever be said. We're going to build a wall to keep out the immigrants because they're ruining the country. What? Well, I believe that. Yes, I can't believe he came out and said that. We're going to stop Muslim immigration for a while until we figure out which one of these guys are terrorists, because ISIS is all over the place. Did he say he's going to stop Muslim immigration? Doesn't he realize how racist that sounds? And you're just amazed. You're amazed. And then you suddenly realize, no, he's saying things that I believe in, and for the reasons I believe in it. Look, I'm not trying to say that this guy's a conservative. He's a Trumpian. I've said this from the beginning. I'll probably, until I see evidence otherwise, that's what I'm going to say. But when we talk about the polls, this is the thought I want to leave you with. Hillary might be up 10 points now. That's fine. But honest to God, as a messaging person, I'm telling you that for at least the last two elections, and probably since the election of 1984, the Democrats have been running unopposed. They've been running unopposed because Bush squeaked by. He lost the popular vote, and then he squeaked by. The Democrats have been running unopposed because they fight dirty, and they use emotion, and they connect with people immediately using the emotional argument. And we haven't had a candidate who does that since Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan, in many ways, is the mirror image. He's the negative image of Trump, where all of Trump's weaknesses were Reagan's strengths. But at the same time, Ronald Reagan and Donald Trump do have something in common, and that is they are blowing that horn of American freedom, and they're saying to the American people, it needs to be morning in America. It's always morning in America here. If you don't like the way things are going, we're gonna go in there. We're gonna kick it open. That's what their message is for both of them, and both of them connect with people, because whatever you think of Ronald Reagan, and especially whatever you think of Donald Trump, you don't get the impression that his response is going to be a 5-paragraph measured essay that basically says the system is rigged, but doesn't actually come out and say the system is rigged, and we all know the system is rigged, and by saying the system is rigged, now we're at the end of the parade with the boy saying he's not wearing any clothes. I don't care how many points Hillary Clinton is up right now. I want to see what happens when we come out of the conventions, because I watched how Donald Trump fought against Republicans, and I think it's about time he started to, and he is. He's smart enough to do that. Now I want to see what happens when he fights back at Hillary Clinton. No one in my living memory has fought the Democrats with the same weapons that they use against us. But Donald Trump does. And at this point, despite my myriad reservations and the fact that I don't consider him a conservative at all, I cannot imagine anything worse for this country than the continuation of the destruction of rule of law, which is brought about by the iron triangle of Democratic politicians in Washington, news media in New York, and the cultural machine in Los Angeles. If that's not destroyed, then it's over, because we can't even get our arguments on the table. We can't even get them on the table. It's just not allowed to talk about. You can't talk about building a wall to keep out hardworking Mexican immigrants. You can't talk about excluding an entire class of people or a race of people. What kind of monster are you? Oh, you're right. Sorry. I was just saying. No. If we don't have a border, it's not a country. If we don't keep out people that are coming in here to kill us, then it's suicide. No. I don't. I'm sorry. No, free. I'm not gonna pretend that a ripple 7.5 miles away is evidence of a air-breathing creature the size of a bus. I'm not gonna believe that anymore. Anyway, time for me to go home, get a little sleep. It's been about 2 hours, a little less than. I always close the show this way. I try to. I want to thank the members out there. We picked up a bunch of you after PJTV. I made a pretty strong appeal yesterday. We had a good first day. We got about 13% of the way to the goal that we need, and that goal means complete economic self-sufficiency, and it also means hiring people to do the social media, because the one thing I've realized late in the game is I have realized that my entire career, Jeremy and some of these other guys figured this out about a year ago, but it took me longer. I've been doing this videos for 8 years, and I've been including the writing for probably 12 or 13. And I've been running my business the same way that everybody else has been running this business. And that is, if I was Nike, I would manufacture the best pair of athletic shoes in the world, and my sales plan is to leave a box of them out on the street, hope somebody comes by and picks it up, and hope that they leave $200 on the curb under a rock that I'll provide. That's how we've been running this thing. We've been counting on the viral thing. We've been counting on links. We've been counting on all this other stuff. There's some fatigue about that. Facebook is getting stronger. We did probably 600,000 views on the Orlando video. We need to put more money behind this. So we need more money to advertise and get them in front of people's eyes. And it's amazing how much you can do with very little money on social media. And more importantly, we have to put as much effort into marketing this product as we do into making this product. And that's not something I've ever realized until a month ago, and it never hit me in the gut emotionally the way it did yesterday morning when I realized that this woman was going to walk away from these charges. That, just so you know, I mean, you're going to be hearing this a lot from me. I spent the whole day yesterday, I must have said this 15 times to the staff here. We actually have a staff now, thanks to those members who came over from PJTV. It's not just me and somebody who comes in part-time to help with the membership. We actually have a staff now. Yes, it does mean Scott could quit his retail job. Precious Snowflake Scott Ott is working as a salesman in order to feed his family. I just did the tease for the latest News Actually. The guy's absolutely brilliant. He's Jon Stewart brilliant. You give him his head and let him do what he wants to. He's that funny and that clever. And he's working 9 to 5 in a retail store in Texas trying to sell people things. So we need to get him out of there. And he needs to pay his rent. And I don't have the money to pay his rent and my rent. We need more money. That means we need more members. But the one thing I was going to say a minute ago, I had thought this 15 times before. I've said this in the newsletters I send out to people. We're going to switch our emphasis from trying to get people to become members to try to get them on the mailing list, because that is the halfway house, and that's the smart play. I've always been completely transparent about this with you guys, because I consider myself to be your employee. let me just say this. 15 times yesterday, I said, for the first time in my life, I'm not embarrassed to ask for financial help. The first time ever yesterday, first time ever, I realized the magnitude of the trouble that we're in and the danger that we're in. And I realized that my discomfort, which is based on how I was raised, and based on the fact that I had to ask a lot of people for money when I was starving for 25, 30 years, so that's a big part of it too. I began to realize that that is a form of, it's just an attitude that I cannot afford to have anymore. I cannot afford that attitude anymore. I have to now go out there and ring this bell every day and try to wring as much money out of you fine people as I possibly can, because we can do some good with it. We can pull some of those papers down off the windows and let some light in here. And if we don't, we're going to lose this country. We're in terrible trouble. So, if you're not a member, and you can be, we really need your help now. We're going to spend that money on full-time social media person who's doing nothing but linking and posting, and we're going to spend that money that we get on actually buying advertising and marketing our product. Imagine that. So if you are a member and you know of somebody who might want to be one, we need them. And if you're not, and you've been watching this stuff for a long time and it's within your means, we need it. And we need it desperately. Not me. I'm doing fine. I'm not doing great, but I'm doing fine. The country needs us in this fight, and it does. These videos cost free, and these lights cost money, and the electricity, and the building, it all costs money, and I have to pay rent too. I've got enough money coming in now from the membership and from the work I do to pay my rent and to pay a little staff. But if we're going to get these things out there to millions of people and make them see the light, so that nobody can say, out of ignorance, no, she was cleared of the emails thing 2 weeks ago. No, she's been cleared. How did she know that she'd been cleared? She'd been told that she'd been cleared by the social proof. So unfortunately, my days of being modest and gentlemanly about this are over. I think in our newsletter that we sent out, I sent out a picture. I was very proud of this. I'll undoubtedly do this as a Facebook post. We sent it out in the newsletter yesterday to people who are not members. The membership got a letter thanking them, telling them how much we appreciate what we're doing and hoping that they enjoy their member benefits. But the non-members on the mailing list got an email from me, which we don't send out too often. And it basically said, we need some help. And then I just had this connection, which was a rather nice connection. I said, I read enough history to know that there was a time when there was a man who was an extremely proud man, a vain man, a man whose personal dignity and personal reputation was absolutely everything to him. And he had to get on his knees in front of the whole world and beg for help. And that was Winston Churchill. He came to America again and again and again with his hat in his hand and begged Franklin Roosevelt and the American people to give him the money to stay in this fight. And he said something that I put on this email. He said, give us the tools and we'll finish the job. And then just as I was getting ready to wrap up that email, I thought, well, Bill, you can't compare yourself to Winston Churchill. You just can't. So I wrote, now look, I'm no Winston Churchill, because I'm not, but I'm not going to let this country be 300 million copies of Winston Smith either. Winston Smith was the protagonist in 1984, who was broken by the power of the big state, rebelled against the system, was tortured and social proofed out of it, ended up loving Big Brother, took a bullet in the back of the head. They called him, Orwell called him Winston Smith specifically because he liked the idea of a name that was so heroic and yet so common that by degrading the name of Winston in Winston Smith, he was showing the power of the state. He could knock a Winston down on his knees and have him never get up again. And that's basically it. So give us the tools and we'll finish the job. At the very least, give us the tools and we'll continue the job until we drop dead. Anyway, as always, thanks to all of you. It's been great, especially good for me tonight. Hopefully I'll be able to catch most of this lightning in the bottle and whatever force channels through me when I'm doing my public speaking or Stratosphere lounges. I just, every day I get down and pray it's going to be there tomorrow when I need it, when I'm sitting in front of the keyboard, and usually it's true. Wild Goose says another thing Winston Churchill said was never, 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 never give up. What a guy. I just said I'm not Winston Churchill, and it's certainly true. But I realized when I wrote this that there were many days when Winston Churchill wasn't Winston Churchill. Many days when he must have woken up and been as pessimistic and as cynical and depressed as anybody. There were many, many days when Winston Churchill was not Winston Churchill. But on some level, he got up and kept getting up, and he put one foot in front of the other, and he, proud man, got on his knees and begged America for money, for Lend-Lease, and he got it, and he stayed in the fight, and he stayed in the fight long enough to win the fight. If Britain had fallen in 1939-40, then there would be no two-front war with the Russians. Hitler could have thrown his entire weight against Russia. He would have beaten the Russians because he damn near beat the Russians, damn near beat them in Moscow and Stalingrad, while still having a commitment on the Western Front with Britain and the Allies and Africa and all the rest of it. So that's that. It's been a great show. It's been a lot of fun tonight, and very, very good for me. It's always good to hear the support, and it's always so good to see the kind words that all of you write. It's the most important thing for me, actually. So thank you again. This will be the end of episode 123. Yep, how about that? And give us the tool, and we'll finish the job. That's my motto from now on. Don't give up hope. Don't give up. That's their entire plan. That's everything that they count on, is for you to be demoralized, throw down the paper and say, screw it, we're done. We're not done. We're never done. Not ever. All right. Well, I'll see you during the week with various new messages, and I'll certainly try to be here next Wednesday. And with any luck, we get some of these staff members on, and they can take a fair amount of work off my shoulders and let me concentrate on the stuff that I seem to be best at. Thank you again for being with us tonight. It's been a pleasure. Keep your chin up. Don't let the bastards get you down. And remember that truth is on our side, and truth is a very powerful ally.